What I mean by that is that their energy is outside of them. They're worrying about the next thing. They're worrying about the past of what they said or what has happened, and worrying about the future, that they're never truly present of what it feels like to be in the body. And there's this huge disconnect from that.
Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered, where we ditch the one-size-fits-all advice. I'm Lindsie, nurse turned health coach, author of Healing Beyond the Diagnosis, and mindful eating advocate. Here, we go beyond the diagnosis so you can start understanding the messages behind your symptoms. Now, before we get into today's guest, I wanted to let you all know that I am looking for 10 ladies to help me up-level my offerings so I can better serve you and get you the results that you desire. Be sure to check the show notes for the link to book a quick call with me and grab your freebie. Today, my guest is Tanya Ward. Tanya works with midlife women exiting survival mode caregiving, and after 25 years in the wellness space, she identified a pattern. Chronic responsibility reshapes stress physiology, and clarity doesn't return until the nervous system feels safe again. She leads a structured 6-month recalibration process grounded in nervous system science, helping women stabilize, interrupt stress patterns, and rebuild sustainable energy. As a reminder, the content shared here on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Now settle in, maybe get ready to take some notes, and let's dive in. Here is my conversation with Tanya Ward. Hello, welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered, and welcome to Tanya. This is a topic that gets brought up so much, but I also feel like you can't talk about it enough. Being in that survival mode. I mean, even my podcast is PCOS Unfiltered, Nourish, Heal, Thrive, so we want to get to the more thriving state, right? So let's kind of just start by, telling us a little bit more about you and, what's led you here to your work that you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And you're right that this nervous system calibration is showing up across so many different platforms and in different areas of life for people on all genders with that. So I don't think anybody is immune from that chronic hypervigilance that occurs after holding everything for everybody for so long. So whether you're a mother, you're a father, something in between, none of those, that we're all experiencing on some level. So I'm Tanya Ward, and I have been in the wellness space for over 25 years. And as a massage therapist, early on, I noticed that there was this pattern that was reoccurring with my clients. My clients would walk in with tight shoulders, clenched jaw, breaking through their night guards that they were grinding so much at night, and really holding these patterns in their body that no amount of body work or rest was really breaking through and creating any lasting change. And I got really curious about that. And it was right about that same time in that part of my career that my daughter was starting to go through her own process, coming into adolescence and all of the things that go with it. And it was this, at the time, I did not think it was so wonderful and beautiful. But in hindsight, it really was this beautiful unfolding that really was the catalyst, those two turning points that brought me to where I am today. So in my bodywork practice, I had been noticing these patterns. And at the same time, like I said, going through this with my daughter, what became clear is that all of these things were being fueled by these processes that were actually created by that chronic stress and the hormones that have been in chronic hypervigilance for so long that were keeping my clients in those patterns. And I soon began to see myself in the same way and really coming to understand that mindset alone isn't enough to really unwind all of that anxiety, all of the exhaustion, and everything else that comes along with that chronic fight or flight or freeze state. So that's
Yeah.
really what fueled me to do the work that I do now.
Yeah. I mean, and I love what you mentioned there because I feel like mindset gets tossed around a lot. And I feel like I even say that because that's, I don't know what more people might relate to instead of saying like nervous system regulation, but that's truly what it comes down to. That's just like one probably tiny top layer, right? Like, mindset, like you need to go deeper to really, get out of that survival mode like you talk about.
For sure. Well,
Yeah.
and so what I see is that until the body feels safe, until we've given the body cues that it's okay to move forward, that really those mindset strategies are only going to be so effective. And so I see so many people, and I was in the same camp, that are not understanding, like, I'm doing all the right things, I'm doing all the self-care. Why isn't it working? Well, because it was that very first step that was missed in that path of sending the body those signals that, I always bring up the saber-toothed tiger analogy, that our stress responses, that flight or fight response, is only designed to go for about 20 minutes or so, right? So back in the day when we were getting chased by the saber-toothed tiger, right? Get out of danger, get to safety, and then there would be a reset at some point. But what happens when we're constantly bombarded by all these stress factors of taking care of the kids, taking care of our careers, taking care of the leading, in our whatever our work situations are and in our families, taking care of aging parents, and it just gets piled on top, and we never get that reprieve and a time to reset. So that's a big part of my work. Is the very first step is focusing on getting back into the body, feeling safe in the body. I do a lot of energy work personally and in my teachings about how to work with our subtle energy bodies to help signal to the brain to switch off that stress response, that it's okay to turn this off. This is time to reset. And that's when you can have the mindset work that comes in and you go, okay, now I see how to reframe this. Now this can become my affirmation or my mantra. And it actually is doing something versus just adding more noise to the background of the nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. So you work with a lot of women in like midlife, I believe, right?
I do,
But,
yeah.
For women, I mean, really any stage of life, I feel like, especially just in the times that we live in nowadays, being stimulated by so many things that we sometimes can control, can't control. But why do you feel like these women are so exhausted and just feel stuck, even after maybe some therapy, self-care, personal development work? Like, what are you seeing that's still keeping them stuck?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're absolutely right. It can happen from as early as adolescence. Like I saw my daughter, right, going through that. And now she's almost 23, and I see her go through little phases of it as she's going through the college process, right? So the stress response definitely is there. And I think a big part of what's keeping them stuck is that you can't really recalibrate under pressure. that you need to be able to get to a point of getting the physiological response to shut off, to calm down, for the nervous system to quiet, to be able to get to that next step where you can recalibrate, because that long-term stress response is just increasing that pathway of that hypervigilance. I'm not safe. I still have to be on guard. I still have to. And that bracing never goes away. So until we take some steps back and get safe in the body, start to get connected with the body, I think is always going to perpetuate that. And I see so many people across, like I said, all genders, all ages, walking around not in their body. And what I mean by that is that their energy is outside of them. They're worrying about the next thing. They're worrying about the past of what they said or what has happened, and worrying about the future, that they're never truly present of what it feels like to be in the body. And there's this huge disconnect from that of bringing so I work in multiple layers of body, mind, and soul, and it's not a linear process. Usually, it's this kind of winding process that we have to go through, but of really coming back into the body, feeling safe, and starting there. Does that make sense? Did I answer that question?
Yeah. Yes. And so, so being more specific, I mean, you kind of mentioned a few things that, that you would see like with your clients and stuff, but what actually is happening, in the body, like inward, outward, more specifically, like I said, when the nervous system is, stuck.
Yeah. So that cortisol and the other stress hormones that get turned on never get turned off. And like I had talked about earlier, those were never meant to be long-term states in the body. And so as those chemicals start to be depleted, we've all probably have heard, and I'm sure you do a lot of it in your work, that adrenaline fatigue, right? Of that the body just can't produce it. So then it's looking for something else to pull in. I think that's a big part of that exhaustion. And then that chronic stress state, that hypervigilance, then becomes the new baseline. And with that, because our nervous system has been taught, here is the stressor, you've got to get out of danger, right? Get away from the tiger, which is now the boss, the kids, the traffic, all of these things are now the new saber-toothed tiger. And within that, we don't have the relaxation in our nervous system to then have higher thought and clarity, and to be able to think things through in a more intuitive way. It all becomes very reactionary. And so that exhaustion just becomes this perpetuating cycle that then shows up in the body physically, that shows up mentally, emotionally, spiritually as guarded, not being feeling not being safe to be seen or heard or speak their truth or ask for their needs to be met, or looking to meet their needs and asking for support as that's needed. So all of that, I think, just kind of shuts down and compresses.
Yeah. I mean, I see that in so many women that I talk to, with PCOS. Maybe they even have some other diagnosis going on because, you mentioned the stress hormones, cortisol, like that, it becomes a vicious cycle that affects, and a lot of the times, as I've mentioned in other episodes, insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance can be a driving factor for PCOS a lot of the times. Yes, there is some adrenal, PCOS too, but it's because it all goes together, right? You got the cortisol affecting the insulin affecting the sex hormones, all of that stuff is really tied together. And I see that so much. That's why I wanted to have you on too, because I think this is such an important topic, because I think at the root of it, a lot of times, it is the nervous system is what it comes down to. So
For sure. And it's fascinating of how that then perpetuates your cardiovascular health
oh
and
yes.
your fit, like it
Yeah.
just compounds.
Everything.
And
Hmm.
then you end up with not only this major cycle that you're in that you can't break out of, but then you have all these other layers as well. And
Yeah.
I definitely can see how that would be very overwhelming and almost, getting to the point of hopelessness of like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, like there's just so many layers. And because the nervous system isn't regulated, isn't in a safe space, or isn't turning off that fight or fight response, that you never get to that point of getting enough energy to be able to then follow through on breaking any of those patterns too.
Yeah. Yeah. What's kind of the timeline, for healing the nervous system? You do like a 6 month, kind of program container, but yeah, what's, do some people even need beyond that? Like what's the timeline, for a lot of people that you see?
Yeah. So the timeline, I'm going to say first and foremost, is individual. I'm sure you've
Mhm.
seen that
Yes.
as well. I've seen that in my years of my bodywork practice, seeing that in all of the women that I've been working with in nervous system recalibration, that everybody heals at a different rate. And so, first and foremost, I honor that cycle no matter what, where somebody is at and what their pace is. So
Mhm.
there is no timeline, but in my framework that I have, what I found is 6 months is a 6 month program is a good amount of time to be able to go deep into some of these processes, let it unfold without forcing, and being able to get to a point either for that next layer that has come up to heal. I believe, and I've seen it once again in everything that I do in my work. I almost always do because I've gone through it myself. So I've lived it. I've found the what didn't work, what works, and really, I'm a curious person. So I dig deep and find out the nuts and bolts and the heart of everything, and really seeing how once somebody is committing to the work of I can't take it anymore, I'm done, I can't go on like this anymore. That's really that point then that I think it's going to be a lifelong process of healing and learning. And as we come into different lessons of all different layers, that unfolds. But I found that that 6 month process doesn't rush. It allows for that recalibration. It allows for repatterning. And then it allows for the integration as well of somebody who has support and guidance going along that process. And, I used to offer sessions that were based on just when a client wanted to come in, or I might make my recommendations, but maybe they come in once every 6 months or maybe once a month. And it was kind of wishy washy. They might feel good for a little bit, feel good after their session, but it wasn't anything that would then set up the foundation for lasting change. So I really committed that in my mission of helping the world heal by first healing myself, helping others heal so that that ripples out through their world and through the entire universe as well, that I have to have some sort of container for that to be able to facilitate those results. So that's why I have it at the 6 months. After 6 months,
Mhm.
sometimes people work with me right away. Sometimes they need to take a month and then they come back. They're like, okay, now there's whole new thing, a whole
Yeah.
new layer has come up. They have new awareness. So we go back into it. So the work is never done, but I find the 6 month is a really sweet spot for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's important. In the more that I talk to, women with PCOS especially, they all have different symptoms, different, they've been experiencing things for, a variety of lengths of time. They all have, of course, different backgrounds and different childhoods and different, just all kinds of things that play a role. So like you said, yes, it is going to be, individualized as well. And we can say, sure, like this is a good amount of time. Some people, might need, more or less. And I think a lot of people just have to understand that, no matter what it is, even in general, whether it's working, with somebody like you or somebody like me, it's going to be different for everybody because we are all so different. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Are you seeing like a lot of people when they come to you, have they tried a lot of other therapies, whether that's talk therapy, are you seeing that they've tried a lot of other stuff, or do you still even maybe encourage them to do some of that other stuff while they're working with you?
Absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of women coming to me who are at their end point of doing all of the things that haven't been really something to move the needle. It may help initially, but what I hear is adding journaling and meditation and talk therapy. All these things have then become another to do, another chore that it's an obligation, which is a really heavy feeling. And so they're looking for something different. And that's really where I love to work with clients, is once again showing them a different way of how to approach it. And oftentimes people are coming to see me while they're still working with a therapist. That's awesome. A lot of therapists will refer to me because they say, you know what, we've reached this point. We've been working years and years and they're at a plateau. I think that, they have this conversation with their patient, who then comes to me and saying, she thought there was something that could then, there's a different layer that can help turn this gear for me to help get past this. And sure enough, we start working with the nervous system. We start working with our subtle energies of the body, and things start to soften. The light starts to come in, the clarity starts to come in. And to answer your other question, absolutely, I encourage people to continue that work if they are in therapy. If something's working, you trust your provider with that, absolutely continue to do the work, because that's going to help bridge the work that we're doing, because that stuff is not in my scope. And I am a firm believer in holistic care. And once again, that's mind, body, and soul being addressed. And I do so much with the mind, not necessarily psychological, out of my scope, don't do it. Not dealing with the physical body so much. Like you are, and or the hormones. So whatever that is, yes, get your support, right? We all need our support team that comes together, and you're able to then have that really beautiful holistic integration that then starts to really turn the gears and help make a profound shift.
Yeah. I mean, I love when I can work with somebody that's also doing the other things, because it all goes together. And I've spoken about this. I just did an episode actually with somebody. We were talking about how specialized healthcare is in general, so it's kind of similar, even to what we do. Yes, like I look at the whole body as well, but there's still some things that I'm not an expert in. So I love being able to work in conjunction with other providers, other coaches, whatever it might be, to really truly help that person. Because I feel like that gets missed a lot of times in traditional healthcare, because they're only looking at the one system, and then they go to somebody else and they're looking at another system, and they're not looking at the whole body. We are.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
That was an amazing conversation with Tanya. I'll be sure to link everything in the show notes if you'd like to connect with her, in addition to how to book a quick call with me so I can be sure that I'm offering the programs and events that align with what you desire, along with the opportunity to grab my mindful eating guide. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because remember, healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from understanding better. I am sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, Heal, Thrive.